Mercury is a naturally occurring chemical element found in rock in the Earth's crust, including in deposits of coal. On the periodic table, it has the symbol Hg, and its atomic number is 80. It exists in several forms. Elemental, metallic, mercury, inorganic mercury compounds, methyl mercury and other organic compounds. Elemental, metallic, mercury. Elemental or metallic mercury is a shiny, silver-white metal, historically referred to as quicksilver, and is liquid at room temperature. It is used in older thermometers, fluorescent light bulbs and some electrical switches. When dropped, elemental mercury breaks into smaller droplets which can go through small cracks or become strongly attached to certain materials. At room temperature, exposed elemental mercury can evaporate to become an invisible, odorless toxic vapor. If heated, it is a colorless, odorless gas. Elemental mercury is an element that has not reacted with another substance. When mercury reacts with another substance, it forms a compound, such as inorganic mercury salts or methyl mercury. Inorganic mercury. In its inorganic form, mercury occurs abundantly in the environment, primarily as the minerals cinnabar and metacinnabar, and as impurities in other minerals. Mercury can readily combine with chlorine, sulfur, and other elements, and subsequently weather to form inorganic salts. Inorganic mercury salts can be transported in water and occur in soil. Dust containing these salts can enter the air from mining deposits of ores that contain mercury. Emissions of both elemental or inorganic mercury can occur from coal-fired power plants, burning of municipal and medical waste, and from factories that use mercury. Inorganic mercury can also enter water or soil from the weathering of rocks that contain inorganic mercury salts, and from factories or water treatment facilities that release water contaminated with mercury. Although the use of mercury salts in consumer products, such as medicinal products, have been discontinued, inorganic mercury compounds are still being widely used in skin lightening soaps and creams. Mercuric chloride is used in photography and as a topical antiseptic and disinfectant, wood preservative, and fungicide. In the past, mercurous chloride was widely used in medicinal products, including laxatives, worming medications, and teething powders. It has since been replaced by safer and more effective agents. Mercuric sulfide is used to color paints and is one of the red coloring agents used in tattoo dyes. Human exposure to inorganic mercury salts can occur both in occupational and environmental settings. Occupations with higher risk of exposure to mercury and its salts include mining, electrical equipment manufacturing, and chemical and metal processing in which mercury is used. In the general population, exposure to mercuric chloride can occur through the dermal route from the use of soaps and creams or topical antiseptics and disinfectants. Another, less well-documented, source of exposure to inorganic mercury salts among the general population is from their use in ethnic religious, magical, and ritualistic practices and in herbal remedies. Methyl mercury. When inorganic mercury salts can become attached to airborne particles. Rain and snow deposit these particles on land. Even after mercury gets deposited on land, it often returns to the atmosphere, as a gas or associated with particles, and then redeposits elsewhere. As it cycles between the atmosphere, land, and water, mercury undergoes a series of complex chemical and physical transformations, many of which are not completely understood. Microscopic organisms can combine mercury with carbon, thus converting it from an inorganic to organic form. Methyl mercury is the most common organic mercury compound found in the environment, and is highly toxic. Emissions of mercury into the air. Mercury becomes a problem for the environment when it is released from rock and ends up in the atmosphere and in water. These releases can happen naturally. Both volcanoes and forest fires send mercury into the atmosphere. Human activities, however, are responsible for much of the mercury that is released into the environment. The burning of coal, oil and wood as fuel can cause mercury to become airborne, as can burning wastes that contain mercury. This airborne mercury can fall to the ground in raindrops, in dust, or simply due to gravity, known as air deposition. The amount of mercury deposited in a given area depends on how much mercury is released from local, regional, national, and international sources. Exposure to mercury. All humans are exposed to some level of mercury. Most people are exposed to low levels of mercury, often through chronic exposure, continuous or intermittent long-term contact. However, some people are exposed to high levels of mercury, including acute exposure occurring over a short period of time, often less than a day. An example of acute exposure would be mercury exposure due to an industrial accident. Factors that determine whether health effects occur and their severity include the type of mercury concerned, the dose, the age or developmental stage of the person exposed. The fetus is most susceptible. The duration of exposure, the route of exposure, inhalation, ingestion or dermal contact. Generally, two groups are more sensitive to the effects of mercury. Fetuses are most susceptible to developmental effects due to mercury. Methylmercury exposure in the womb can result from a mother's consumption of fish and shellfish. It can adversely affect a baby's growing brain and nervous system. The primary health effect of methylmercury is impaired neurological development. Therefore, cognitive thinking, memory, attention, language, and fine motor and visual spatial skills may be affected in children who were exposed to methylmercury as fetuses. The second group is people who are regularly exposed chronic exposure to high levels of mercury, such as populations that rely on subsistence fishing or people who are occupationally exposed. Among selected subsistence fishing populations, between 1,500 and 17,000 children showed cognitive impairment, mild mental retardation caused by the consumption of fish containing mercury. These included populations in Brazil, Canada, China, Colombia and Greenland. A significant example of mercury exposure affecting public health occurred in Minamata, Japan, between 1932 and 1968, where a factory producing acetic acid discharged waste liquid into Minamata Bay. The discharge included high concentrations of methylmercury. The bay was rich in fish and shellfish, providing the main livelihood for local residents and fishermen from other areas. For many years, no one realized that the fish were contaminated with mercury, and that it was causing a strange disease in the local community and in other districts. At least 50,000 people were affected to some extent and more than 2,000 cases of Minamata disease were certified. Minamata disease peaked in the 1950s, with severe cases suffering brain damage, paralysis, incoherent speech and delirium. Health effects of mercury exposure. Elemental and methylmercury are toxic to the central and peripheral nervous systems. The inhalation of mercury vapor can produce harmful effects on the nervous, digestive and immune systems, lungs and kidneys, and may be fatal. The inorganic salts of mercury are corrosive to the skin, eyes and gastrointestinal tract, and may induce kidney toxicity if ingested. Neurological and behavioral disorders may be observed after inhalation, ingestion or dermal exposure of different mercury compounds. Symptoms include tremors, insomnia, memory loss, neuromuscular effects, headaches and cognitive and motor dysfunction. Mild, subclinical signs of central nervous system toxicity can be seen in workers exposed to an elemental mercury level in the air of 20 micrograms per cubic meter or more for several years. Kidney effects have been reported, ranging from increased protein in the urine to kidney failure.